My name is Charlotte. I'm sitting in my office, looking at the court documents in front of me, the final verdict clear as day. The family that once took me for granted is now facing the consequences of their actions. It's a moment of vindication, but also a long-awaited closure. Let me take you back to the beginning. I come from a family where I've always been the odd one out. My parents, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, are a traditional couple. My father is a proud man, always concerned about his social standing, and my mother is overly focused on appearances. My younger sister, Emily, has always been their golden child. They've doted on her, showered her with love and praise, while I've been the one quietly working hard to make a name for myself. I built my own business from the ground up, an LLC that has been quite successful. I've always been generous with my family, paying for various things over the years without a second thought. There was a family celebration banquet that they were throwing. I was excited, dressed up early, and made my way there with a big smile on my face. As I reached for the door of the banquet hall, I heard those words that would change everything. "Sorry, you're not invited. Leave." I thought it was a sick joke at first. But then, my father called the security. And he shouted, loud enough for everyone in the lobby to hear, "Get this beggar out." I looked at my mother, who refused to meet my eyes, and my sister, who smirked. I didn't make a scene. I just straightened my back and walked away, my footsteps echoing in the empty lobby. What they didn't know was that I had paid for every single aspect of that celebration. The venue, the catering, the fancy gold-plated invitations, the Airbnb rentals for our out-of-town relatives, and even the champagne tower that my mother insisted on for the aesthetic. They thought it was all from my father's retirement bonus, but it was all coming out of my account. I had been doing this quietly, willingly, for years. Once I got in my car, I took a deep breath. I opened my banking app and started canceling all the payments. The $7,200 for the banquet catering was reversed. The $12,000 honeymoon flights for my sister were revoked. The $4,800 spa weekend for my mother and her book club was gone. And the $52,000 ongoing payments on the beach condo they claimed as my father's legacy, all under my LLC, were frozen immediately. In total, I caused $76,000 worth of damage to their plans. By the time I got home, my phone was blowing up with 56 missed calls. Half were from my family, and the other half were from numbers I didn't recognize. Then, there was a hard knock on my door. I checked the peephole and saw my sister's husband, Tom. He was red-faced, disheveled, and clutching his phone like it was a ticking time bomb. He barked, "You need to fix this." Without even saying hello. They just canceled the banquet food. The hotel won't release the rooms. And my honeymoon tickets got voided mid-check-in. I leaned against the doorframe and said, "Strange. Sounds like someone didn't double-check who actually owned those payments." He seemed shocked. "You did this because they kicked you out?" I replied, "No. I did this because they forgot the rule of biting the hand that feeds you. They should have made sure the hand wasn't holding the receipts." He tried to look past me, maybe to see if my parents were there or to find some sign of regret. But there was none. I held up a thick, tabbed, color-coded folder. Inside were signed contracts with my LLC listed as the financial sponsor, cancellation clauses with my name as the sole authority, and payment reversals that were processed right after their betrayal. I told him, I warned them 3 years ago. I said if they treated me like a bank, I'd start acting like a banker. He said I was punishing the whole family, but I just smiled and said, "No. I'm protecting my investment and cutting my losses." He raised his voice, "They're your parents." I simply replied, "They called me a beggar." He had no answer and just walked off, muttering about lawyers. That night, I opened a new folder labeled Inheritance Audit, Phase 2. The next morning, I had 32 emails. Some were polite, some were threatening, but all were panicked. My mother said, "We didn't mean what we said." Emotions were high. Can we talk? My father just forwarded an unpaid invoice from the venue. One of the emails that really got to me was from a family group thread I hadn't been added to in years. My cousin sent a screenshot saying, "Charlotte's always been sensitive. She'll come crawling back. She always does." I laughed and replied, "Just a reminder, I own the crawl space." And the locks were changed. Later that afternoon, I got a message from my parents' accountant. He asked to discuss some irregularities. He'd noticed that the payments for the beach condo were coming from my LLC, not their trust. I confirmed it and asked the question I'd been waiting 3 years to ask: have they declared that condo as their asset in annual filings? There was silence at first. Then they claimed it was an inheritance gift from a private family investor, but there was no documentation. They had not only been ungrateful but also fraudulent. I called my lawyer, Jake. I asked him how fast we could serve them papers to make the condo and all unpaid funds legally untouchable. He said, within 48 hours. By noon, the papers were drafted. A cease and desist for slander, misrepresentation, and unauthorized use of funds, and a property reassignment filing to remove my parents' claims over the beach condo. Jake slid the papers across the table and said, "They'll try to call your bluff." I smiled and said, "They already did." That banquet was the bluff. An hour later, the process server confirmed delivery. That night, I got a voicemail from my mother. She was tearful and rambling, saying I was destroying the family over a misunderstanding and that I was always so dramatic. But I let the voicemail rot in my inbox because the next morning, I got a message from my accountant saying the account transfer for the beach condo was confirmed. Jake emailed me and asked if I wanted to take it one step further. I said yes and requested a full audit of the family trust. I wanted to know where every dollar had gone since 2017. The trust audit revealed some shocking things. $18,700 was withdrawn the week I graduated college for what was supposed to be emergency repairs but turned out to be a new kitchen for Emily. $9,000 labeled as education expenses went to front row concert tickets and a spa weekend for my mother. And $34,000 was quietly funneled into my father's antique car restoration. I asked Jake if this was criminal. He said it could be if I wanted it to be, but I just wanted accountability. So we filed a motion for financial recompense and documentation of trust misuse. They had 30 days to respond or settle privately. On the 22nd day, their lawyer reached out with a private settlement offer of $50,000 in restitution, no admission of wrongdoing, and a mutual non-disclosure agreement. Jake chuckled when he read it. I declined because I wanted a record, proof that I wasn't just the black sheep. On the 25th day, my father came to my office. He stood in the doorway, hat in hand, with his pride barely intact. He said, "You've made your point, but you're about to ruin us. Are you proud of that?" I looked at him and said, "No. I'm not proud. I'm tired of funding your life while being written out of your legacy." He tried to speak, but I raised my hand. "You all called me a beggar. So, I stopped giving. And suddenly, everyone remembered what I was worth." He left a blank, signed check on my desk, but I slid it back to him and said, "This was never about your money. It was about mine." When he left, I saw a message from the court system. A preliminary hearing for trust disbursement fraud was scheduled. The family was in an uproar when they heard about the hearing. They didn't think I'd actually go through with it. The night before the hearing, Emily messaged me. "If you go through with this, I swear I'll never forgive you." I didn't reply because I knew she didn't want reconciliation, she just wanted me to go back to being the quiet one. In the courtroom, my parents sat across the aisle with stiff backs and a lawyer who kept checking his watch. The judge asked simple questions, and Jake answered them with math. He projected charts showing how the condo payments came from my LLC and how the trust was siphoned for personal gain. My parents' attorney claimed it was just a misunderstanding, but the judge wasn't convinced. She asked me what outcome I was seeking. I said, truth on paper. That's all. Let the record match reality. She nodded and gavelled. My name was no longer a footnote in their finances, it was the headline. After the hearing, there was silence from my family. No calls, no letters, just the kind of silence that comes when a performance ends. The court ordered the restitution of misused funds back into the trust, the condo's title was permanently transferred to my name, and my parents were removed from any future financial access to assets they hadn't earned. Jake called it elegant justice, I called it balance. Weeks passed, and my phone was blissfully quiet. Then, an envelope slid under my door. Inside was a photo of the family banquet. In the background, there was a blurry but unmistakable image of me, captured mid-turn, mid-leaving. On the back, it said, this was the moment it all fell apart. I held it for a long time and then walked it to the shredder. What fell apart wasn't the family, it was the illusion of it. I built a new folder that day, the Thompson Foundation, a grant for first-generation women putting themselves through school without family help. The first funding came from the sale of the beach condo. And for the first time in my life, every dollar I gave away was truly mine to give.